Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So have you ever wanted to paint it like the masters, like Monet, Van Gogh? Well, I'm going to teach you how you can take one of their master paintings and interpret it into a watercolor. Today we're going to take Monet's favorite, poppy field. Of course, we left out the mother and child, and inspired by the field, and we're going to create our own watercolor landscape using the same kind of techniques he did, tapping little blooms and bright colors, just only in watercolor. I didn't do exactly as his painting. It's inspired by his painting. So this is what I mean by when you go out in the field of like looking at things in nature, or even going to a museum and you get inspired by all the things that they do, but realize, well, I don't paint watercolor, I don't paint oil or acrylic. This is one way you can do it. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Let me know what you think. If you like painting, like you want to learn some more about painting like masters. Also check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials, and a live stream on the top tier. It's just a place people go and support my channel. I'll be adding in a special Facebook Patreon page where people can chit chat and we can go over some maybe prompts and challenges and whatnot, and probably giveaways on my Patreon coming up too. So it's just a place people go and support my channel, and you can check it out right here. Boop. So without further ado, let's get painting. All right, let's go over my supplies for this particular tutorial. I'm using a block, and this is by Fabriano. This is the aqua watercolor, this extra white block. I like the white block. 100% cotton, cold press, 140 pound. We're using a flat wash brush. This is not a special brush. This is like a cheapy one. You can buy this at any craft store or hobby store. It's 1 inch. My number 12 aqua leaf from Princeton. Notice the lovely yellow paint. Paper towels, water. I'm going to be using this color today, the cadmium red light. Almost like using it like wash out of the tube. In many instances, I'll be tapping it and I'll be using it like right out of the tube. So this is one instance where I'd like to use color right out of the tube. I don't always do that, but it's a good one. So of course I've given you the reference photo for the famous Monet poppy field near Argentine, Argentine, whatever, in 1873. My printout is horrible. It's much like prettier reds in here and whatever, but I love the cascading hill. We're not going to paint in the people. We're just going to concentrate on the flower field, and here's got the clouds here, and there's many ways to paint clouds. You can remove paint, you can just kind of paint around. I think removing paint is the easiest way. We want to do an easy way of doing this. I'm not going to paint exactly like this, obviously, because we're not Monet. Would be nice if we were, right? So you just picture yourself, just, you could keep the horizon line up here or down here, but he is kind of like halfway. You notice the composition, he's like right in the middle here. Talking about composition now, right? What makes this interesting in this composition? Let's talk about composition. The red and green are complementary colors. Now, obviously my red is not so great here. I think it's maybe because I brightened up the camera. It's also because the printout is crappy. The colors of red and green are complementary colors, so the red really stands out on the green, right? And everything else kind of just blends all in here. And then we get a lot of cool colors here. So those hot colors, the reds just really pop. And then we have some dark colors in the back. So your eye is kind of drawn really into if you see this, right, you're looking at it, really your eye goes right to this like eye level horizon line. And then you kind of notice back in here the red, and then of course the sky. But it's kind of just drawing you right in the middle, isn't it? So when you're doing a composition, you have to be conscious of like where you want the viewer to be drawn to, right? Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to care about the flowers? And you could have done like flowers in the foreground that are bigger. He's just making all very small, kind of quaint. There's a little house back here. Don't necessarily need to draw something like that. But this is the idea of composition. It can be like one, all the way down to here where you only see the landmass here, or further up like this. This is actually, I would say halfway here, but then not here, because you have that hill. The hill's going down here. So those are things you think about. And this tree is kind of funky, don't you think? It looks like a funky lollipop on top of this bushy kind of tree. So let's play around with this idea of Monet. Impressionistic style, again, painting. So I'm just taking a pencil here and just kind of plotting out my little eye level horizon line. And you had like that swooping hill, but then another one coming here, right? So just a pencil line. It's kind of like actually less of a dip. He had less of a dip. I'm going to try and get my eraser and do less of a dip. It was a little dip. And just kind of straight across. All right. I like to start with the sky first. It's just a preference because it's easy to paint green over the blue than to do the opposite, right? So this sky is pretty bright. It looks to me like ultramarine or cobalt. Cobalt is a great color to have in your repertoire if you ever are looking to, get outside of the box and find some other colors naturally that I'm talking to you, because I do all my videos in real time. I won't find it. Oh, here it is. So cobalt is great. Ultramarine deep blue is great. They're kind of similar. A little deeper. Cobalt is great. We're going to play with cobalt. By the way, if you didn't want to do red poppies, play around with doing some lavender, whatever. Okay. I'm going to just loosen up the paint a little bit with this bigger brush and then use the flat wash brush for my sky. See that bright blue? It's really pretty, isn't it? Now his probably has a little, of course the printout is dirty. You could add a teeny bit of like a gray color, like the Paynes gray, just to dull it a little bit. Remember, we get cotton paper. You need a fair amount of this paint. So I'm mixing up a lot. Just adding water to it. And like I said, you could add a little gray to it. But it's such a bright color. Okay. So now I'm going to take my flat wash brush and wet the area on the top. Get it nice and damp. Grabbing more water. Not soaking wet, but a nice little sheen. There's a little element here, sticking here. Just a little sheen. The blocks are great because then you don't have to worry about the paper buckling. They're a little more expensive than the flat paper. The flat paper, you might have to do some stretching. All right, so we're just going to put in this beautiful color. And then we're going to remove clouds with our brush. Just going to add this color. You always want the color to be darker on top, by the way. It's just how skies kind of work. They get lighter on the bottom, darker on top. Just throwing in this color. You can have it try and bleed down if you made it wetter. Mine wasn't super wet. Going in here. Just getting that pigment in here. This paper really soaks it up, so it didn't bleed the way I wanted it to, but that's okay. We can work with it. So it's kind of flat washing away right now, but I want to add some depth of color on top. So I'm going to loosen up some of this really concentrated color. Get it in here, up in here. I don't want it to be dark. I do want that light color. And I'm playing around with kind of the spots that he had in his painting. Like I said, we're not copying the painting per se. We're just getting inspired where the colors are, how they do that. So I'm putting in some of this deeper cobalt. It's already just a nice, light, pretty blue as it is. See that? Because it's a white cloud formation. Now, how I like to do the clouds. I'm going to take the number 12 brush, clean off that brush, and just clean this paper. I'm getting kind of a mess on my desk. Just going to clean it up. Okay. And on the sides. We're going to do removing the paint. So you can kind of just twist it. And just see how I'm just twisting it and tapping it back on a paper towel. It makes it look more natural when you do this. What happens is that you can clean off the brush every now and then too. The paint folds back into the area a little bit, and so it looks like a more natural looking cloud as opposed to taking the paper towel. I got a little splotch of water here, so I'll just put some clouds in here. And the clouds you want smaller on the bottom, bigger on top. This is how you would see it in nature. You're not going to see these big clouds on the bottom. So removing the clouds with the brush, just like so. I could even use the flat wash brush and clean that off. Do the same thing. Just twist it so it's rounded, because remember it's flat. And you can do the little skinny ones down here simply. See, it's a whole removing method that works fantastic. What a color. Look at how pretty those clouds are. Kind of folds back into some of them. I did like the rounder brush better than the flat wash brush, but I'm still going to play with it. Now if you use the paper towel, it's kind of the lazy man way. Scrunch it up. And you can kind of just lift the paint up this way. It removes most of the paint. Just tippy tap. Remove it. The lazy man cloud. But hey, there's nothing wrong being lazy. Sometimes you're in a rush and you don't feel like doing it the hard way. I think both techniques work great. And if your paper towel is more, moist, then it won't take up as much paint. And you'll have that kind of similar effect. The more you push down, the more paint it will take up. So I think we're good with the clouds. We'll do a couple of little skinny ones. Let's make it more of a texture. You could take the brush, little small ones, kind of bright down in here. That one's really bright. Sunshine. You want to kind of match that. Doesn't that look great? I love it. Just a fun, simple technique to make clouds. Okay, clouds are done. Now we're going to work on the grass area, right? Many colors of greens, and then we've got the red. Now with watercolor, see this is oil painting that he did, so you can paint on top of paint because it is opaque. When it's watercolor, it's translucent, and so it's going to show through. You can't paint all this green and then go on red, except you can if you do right out of the tube. So we're going to play around with that. But you want to leave some white spaces so you can tap in a pretty red. So now we did our sky. I'm noticing a little cauliflower bloom starting to happen. I'm just going to soften the edges a little bit. You can just kind of go back on top of these. Just kind of tap them. If you start to see a little cauliflower thing happening, just to soften it so it's not this ugly bloom edge. Little tricks. Just go back in as it's like mostly dry, but it's not dry, and just soften that edge. That's what's happening. That's how you fix that. So it's almost dry, but not really, and then just kind of just tap it and soften that edge a little bit. This one didn't seem to have it. Maybe there was more water over here. So when I took off some of it, it just kind of created that cauliflower bloom. It happens. Okay, greens. Well, one reason why I use peacock a lot, I'm going to show you now, is because when I use cobalt and yellow, it makes kind of a meh kind of green, right? Not bright. It's not the prettiest. So I like to go in and add peacock, which is basically turquoise, and you get that beautiful green. So we're going to mix up a bunch of greens, and we're going to go to town. So it's good. And you can just, if you don't have peacock, you can make a same bright green, which is Prussian blue. There's the Prussian blue. Grab the yellow. The more yellow you add, the brighter it will get. So you water this down, add more yellow. Brighter, brighter, brighter. And I'm watering it down with more yellow. See? And we can make this darker by adding more blue. And I always add a little burnt umber. It's a little dance to get it darker the way I want it to be. My personal preference. And there we go. So we're taking that flat wash brush and we're going to start to play with color here. I'm just going to put some water down. I'm leaving some white in here. See, I'm just kind of moving this brush around like this. And let's just start to put some color in. And we can start to bleed other colors in there too. Just put some nice pretty bright green. We're being inspired. We're not going to copy exactly. You can grab some brown on the corner of your brush, kind of put that in there. Some parts are wet on dry and some parts are wet on wet. Grab some of the darker color. Start to bleed that a little bit in there. Again, a little more brown. You can grab a little gray up in here, just in the corner of your brush. See? Grab that light color. Even water that down with more yellow. I'm going to grab some more yellow. Just really loose and fun. Sweet, right? Same thing with this little hill over here. Notice how I'm kind of going down, sweeping down at an angle with the wet green paint. Grabbing some bright yellow color as well. You can start to grab in some other blues. That cobalt was going to change that green, see? Make it a little duller. And some brown. Now I notice in some of the land that he's got grays happening, maybe some browns and little oranges. So you can just take the side of your brush, kind of play around with that. I'll grab a little bit of that yellow, the red that I have, the cadmium red light. Kind of just put a little bit in here. It should bleed a little bit. If it doesn't, clean off your brush and kind of move it around. Again, I'm going to go grab some more of this green. Really just getting simple. And then there's the dark green. We're going to start to bleed in here a little bit. Some brown. She's nice rolling hill. And you don't have to paint the whole picture. I like how it is going right now. Put that bright green. It's very damp still, right? So now you can just take the corner of this flat brush. I've got some peacock blue and I've got the cobalt, the brown. Kind of playing around, getting this little darker back here. I can grab some Prussian blue, that dark green. See that little hill up there is getting darker. I'm mixing blues, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, little green, getting dark up here again. Tippy tap on its side. Adding a little brown. It's damp up in here. All right, just this little side hustle. Again with this. Just playing. Try not to do too much. You don't want to make it all bleh. What's the word? Overworked. Okay, at this point you can take your number 12 brush. I'm going to clean up some of this mess over here. Start to play around with the red. It's got a little dirty. There's that cadmium red light. We could start to play around with just tapping some of it. Let's see how it does. It's not too bad. Hasn't turned to brown, because remember red and green are complementary colors. And why am I doing this now? Little taps, and like the less water you have on your red, the less it's going to bleed. Already looking cute. Now it's dry here, so maybe grab some of the loose red. Where it's not dry, the thicker red. I'm just getting a feel for like how big I want to do some of these blooms. And you just make them a little bit bigger going down the front. Right? Up here, I don't want to touch it just yet. I might grab some of the thicker paint and just do a little tippy taps and see where this goes. Remember, this green is darker, and we can wait till it dries and really just go on there with the thick paint. But I like the kind of nature of the bleed. We can take a piece of paper and cover our cloud area and do a little splatter. I just splatter on top of like any kind of utensil here or a brush. Those small little blooms up top. Cute, right? Because remember, it was on like one side of the hill. We didn't have the poppies everywhere. Now this kind of splattered, but we can fix how it's going to look. We can get the little ones up top. Splattering is great for like the little tiny blooms. See, you get that little tiny ones up here. And of course we got big ones down here. Well, it's kind of starting to dry. You can go back in those areas with the dark green. Gonna mix up some more dark green. Here. And tap around it. Like you see in the picture. And dark green underneath the poppies. And it will still bleed a little bit. See how they're kind of popping now? It's still very damp over here in the front. I might make that green a little bit more medium green. I might add a little more yellow to that. And just still tap around it. See, it's all dry down here. So you can kind of play with putting some grasses in. Just taking your brush, go like this, swoop it up. But we have that kind of feel of the, and get even darker. I might go in and add some more Prussian blue, some brown with my green, and some areas up in here. And we have that dark field part up in here. We haven't bled the trees yet. We can wait till this all dries, put in some water and bleed the trees. Or don't even bother putting the trees in. Just adding in the dark value. You're just going to be building and building. Go in between those little blooms. So where you have some white in between them, if you want to go in and add a really thick, minimal water, kind of yellow-green, make that pop a little bit. So we're filling in that white space, a little bit yellow-green, just like that. Put a little color down in here. See, really simple, sweet. And you can start to play around with up in here a little more. The Impressionistic used very little. I have some green stuck here, so I'll show you. I'll have to put a tree there. Big strokes. They use a lot of little tapping, dabbing. Seurat did a lot of that. So you can kind of do the same thing. Little tippy taps. Grab the darker color, tap that in there. Obviously it's different in watercolor than it would be with oil paint, but you're just doing this little tippy taps. Just get a little darker. You can kind of do like a little side like this. Look at that, really sweet. I mean, you don't really have to add much more to this. You don't have to add trees. I am particularly going to be adding some trees because right now, see, just if it happens to you, this mistake, green got there. Now you can do one of two things. You can actually paint the bush like this. See? Start to paint like little light green ones first. Or you can do the bleed. I'm going to add the darker color, of course. His was much darker. Take those same colors we talked about for the darker bushes. Getting a little bit darker. And you can get smaller ones, big ones. And they have, I like a little pink highlight around his. The sky is changing. To me, like the little ducks in a row, right? I'm not necessarily going to put the little house. I'm just going to do a couple little bushes. And probably put one over here. A a few over here. I'll add some bright yellow. Simple as that. This took minimal time, right? And that's it. That's our quick Monet study. And I call it a study. You can get more advanced, by adding in all kinds of elements. You can add in nice little grasses. See, with the smaller brush, I'm grabbing the Princeton 8 long round. Grabbing some greens. It's up to you. Get really creative with it. You can actually use yellow right out of the tube too. See? Boom, 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 boom. Didn't know you could do that, right? Very bright. And do more dots. Where they faded here, which is great. You can go back in with the red. Kind of go and add real intense red colors. Boom, boom, boom. Love it. Love it. So inspired by Monet. A little poppy field. Tippy top little ones up here. And some bigger ones. If you have really big ones in the front, you might want to add like a little black dot in the center of them. Now see, I have my little field kind of back here. I wanted to make it a little bit different than here. So I'm adding little dots out here so you can see like a tiny little field kind of happening over here as well. Just little dots kind of going out in a line. And then I would take some dark green as well. Mix up some dark green. Kind of go around that too. Kind of water it down though a little bit. Go on its side like that. Like a little shadow. It's all preference. Just what we did before is fine. Gonna water that down. Boom, boom, boom. And there you go. There's our Monet inspired painting. Blues, the reds, the greens. Play around. Don't want to play around too much, but I'm going to play around with adding some more bright yellowish greens up in here. But right when you do that first wet and wet, it's like the most intense and beautiful part. And I love just kind of leaving the rest of the edges not filled all the way through, right? More of like a vignette kind of style. Adding a little more greens. And just a couple little doodads, dark color. That's that. So I hope you enjoyed that little Monet lesson. They really just did a lot of like really small, minute, dots and stuff like that. And if it feels like it's too splotchy, like I talked about before, you can kind of go in between some of them and add the darker color to make it less splotchy, right? Going around the blooms. It will give it more depth as well, that it's in the field and you can see the darkness in some areas. Don't do it like in every single spot. Like here, it kind of blended. So I'm going to have to add some dark color in between that because it looks kind of one big blended red. Right? And also, if it's starting to look too dark, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to take out some of that darkness. That's it. Sweet little poppy field. Really simple. Take your time with it. The first washes are kind of like the thing, and then you just kind of play around just adding in some red. And that's pretty much all you do. And it's right out of the tube too, so it's pretty simple. All right, I hope you enjoyed this flower field. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Go look at the impressionistic, paintings. You can interpret it, all those oil paintings and acrylic paintings and all that stuff with watercolor, right? Just knowing the tools. Like I said, leaving some space in between. If you're using it right out of the tube, you get that bright, intense red. And also, if you waited for it to dry first, like the whole entire greens, you could go back over the tube with the right, bright, intense red. So, like I said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Take care and have a great day.